Hello there, and welcome to the Composers in the Voice Q&A session. I'm Matt Gray, the General Director of the American Opera Project and the Head of Drama at Composers in the Voice.
I'm Steve Osgood. I am the Artistic Director of Composers and the Voice Fellowship Program.
And I'm Mila Henry. I'm the Artistic Director of the American Opera Project and the Head of Music for Composers and the Voice.
The purpose of this webinar tonight is to give you a chance to ask any questions that you have about this Composers and the Voice Fellowship Program. It is a complicated and multifaceted program that lasts over 2 years with lots of moving parts. And as much as we have gone and tried to give as much information as possible in our program description and the materials that are available on the website, we understand that it is actually really quite complicated, and just having a chance to ask us any questions would be really welcome. So thanks for joining us, and really your questions are what it's all about here tonight.
And on that note, we encourage you to ask those questions via YouTube and Facebook Live. The purpose of this session is to hear from you, so please don't be shy, and we look forward to hearing your comments and any questions that might not be answered already.
And so the process is, once you enter your comments into Facebook Live and YouTube, we will gather them, we'll post them, we'll answer them, and we're going to give you a little time to think about your questions, to start posting those, and we're going to show you a little bit of a promotional video to tell you more about Composers and the Voice.
The kind of colors that a single voice can create throughout all sorts of different ranges is vastly different for the voice than for a violin or a clarinet.
There's nothing like C&V, where you learn how to write for every major different vocal category.
It's a streamlined workshop process going systematically through each operatic voice type.
But within that, Kelly's trying to shape those 16th.
I came right out of college. I was writing for my fellow students, and being in this program, I felt like a kid in a candy store.
I fell in love with the kind of work that singers do, and to really get to know singers and to really have an immense respect, a kind of awe for singers.
I think I'm gonna try to be do what's on the page, but try to also let myself.
When we start each year, we're meeting 6 new composers, 2 or 3 new librettists, sometimes new singers. It's a new family that I'm going to learn about so immensely over the course of a year, of 2 years.
Being able to workshop within a community enables you to fast track your comprehension of why something is working and why it isn't.
AOP is a kind of place to fail and a place to try things and to have it work or not work.
My skill set has increased exponentially, and also my relationship with my operatic composer community has also increased.
I see the sea waving her salt sea goodbyes, and soundless colors rush to take me. With C&V, it was the first time I'd been put in a space where I felt like my talents as a librettist and a lyricist were being encouraged and being cultivated and nurtured and recognized.
We could probably look back at each, look at a little era of Composers and the Voice and see 2, 3, 4 people who have gone on to be creating pieces that are now part of the contemporary canon. Here we are 20 years later, and we see that the table is set up for another 20, 30, 40, 50 years of this.
I'm Elena Ferris.
My name is Clint Berzoni.
My name is Jonathan Douglas Turner.
I'm Joseph Rubenstein.
I'm Greg Spears. I'm a composer.
I'm a composer.
Those songs from that time, I was experimenting with all the ranges of the voice. That was just so fascinating, being able to write to these incredible singers. It's like having Stradivarius. And, oh, right, for that instrument. It was really fulfilling as a composer.
It's so great to see. Thanks, Matt and Mila, for putting that together.
Our pleasure.
And our thanks to the Virginia B. Toolman Foundation for allowing us to make that video, for giving us the support to build that. We've been wanting to do something like that for CNV for a long time. And that's, of course, a great time to mention our other major supporters, the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation and the National Endowment for the Arts, both making substantial contributions to continue this program as we enter our 11th cycle.
And I already see that we have a couple questions coming in. We'd like to start off first just by giving you some basics, and then we will get to the questions that I see appearing in our comment section right now. So one of the most popular questions is, why is it called Composers and the Voice and not Composers and Librettists and the Voice? So Steve, why don't you start us off?
Well, that harkens back to 20 years ago when we started it. Composers and the Voice has gone through several different evolutions, iterations since we founded it in 2002. The idea back then was, on a relatively shoestring budget, how do we take 6 composers and give them a year of hands-on experience writing for the voice? And so literally in the 2002, when we had our first cohort come in, and even through the 2007, 2008 cycle, it was only composers and singers. We had 1 or 2 music directors, 6 singers, and 6 composers. Fortunately, it was very successful, and the moniker stuck. We didn't want to rename it. But after a brief hiatus, after 2008, AOP came back to me. I had stepped away from my artistic director position with the company, and said, Steve, we actually want to bring Composers and the Voice back. Are you interested? And I said, yes, absolutely. There were always some aspects to it, though, that I wanted to really dig into. And so when we brought Composers and the Voice back in 2011, it was a greatly expanded program with several different new components to it that still last until today. And it was then after a couple cycles of that we said, we think now that this curriculum, such as it is, this course of study that our composers are going through, now would actually be really applicable to librettists as well. So we started taking applications from composer librettist teams, librettists on a standalone basis, because of the breadth of the experience, and it's growing into 2 years. Why did we not rename it? Because we didn't. And C and L and V maybe isn't quite as catchy. So we're stuck with Composers and the Voice, but it is very, very, very much for librettists as well.
And a couple other basics. You do not have to be a US citizen to apply, nor do you need to reside in New York. This upcoming cycle is the first time we're going to have some remote sessions in addition to some in-person sessions. However, we cannot cover costs to process an O1 visa if that's the case. And we are also starting a travel and lodging grant for one applicant for this upcoming cycle. I see one question. The first question that came through was whether composers have to accompany their own compositions and make revisions on the spot. And you do not. You get to sit back and listen and relax. We have 2 music directors on the staff that will prepare your songs in the month in between our music sessions. However, in the workshop session itself, there is an opportunity to kind of try things out and make adjustments. And then at the end of the year, if we program that song on our first Glimpse concert, there's more time to really go back and rework a piece.
I would just add into that, Mila, that I think a really important component to every piece, every bit of the work that the American Opera Project does, and definitely Composers in the Voice, is allowing the creators to really step back and watch and not have that kind of that hands-on responsibility, but really be, in the same seat as the audience members. And so that really is how Composers in the Voice is designed. In a song workshop session, each of the new compositions has about 30 minutes of workshop time. And within that time, if the piece is between 3 and 5 minutes long, there's time to hear it once. Sometimes that, will be the first time that everybody is hearing it at all live. Get some response from the creators, hear it again, and then we start pulling it apart. Then we say, what's working? Why is that working? Why is that particular thing that was compositionally put into this piece for this voice? How are you getting away with that? And what can the other composers and librettists learn from that? Similarly, why is that not working? And are there ways that we can change it? So that's where the kind of revisions on the spot really can happen. You have an opportunity to say, oh, wait a second, what if I approached it this way, or if we breathe there, or reset the syllables, there's a chance to really work on the people, on the performers, and see what can be addressed right there in the session.
Absolutely. And another common question is whether you can apply for both fellowships, both as a composer and a librettist. We also cover that on our website, and a little background on that is that you can apply by filling out both applications, as long as you note in your cover letter that you would like to be considered for either fellowship. Composer and librettist applications are evaluated separately. So as long as we have the forms and the work samples as they apply to those individual applications, we'll reference them and adjudicate them accordingly. Although you can have an overlap of referrals and letters of recommendation and such.
Great. Should we go back to some of the additional questions coming in? It's a question. My impression is that the program focuses on songs and short scenes. Is there a possibility of producing a full-length opera for us overly ambitious types?
I love the overly ambitious types. Composers in the Voice is really a workshop setting that is about building skills, having the rare opportunity to work hands-on with these voices, with these performers. And so that really is where the bulk of our energy goes. There are plenty of opportunities within that to explore a bigger piece through either the solo compositions or the final piece for 6 scenes. But the actual kind of mounting of producing of a full-length opera falls then into a different arm of what the American Opera Project does, and isn't really within the goals specifically of Composers in the Voice.
All right. The next question we have is whether there's a total of 2 or 3 librettists and not 2 or 3 teams, or composer librettist teams. And that is correct. We have 6 composers and up to 3 librettists. And that can include 1 team, but they would each take an individual composer and librettist slot in that case.
Question coming in also from Troy. Can individuals in their last year of a graduate school program apply to this? Or would you require librettist applicants with more vocational experience in opera? Splitting that into 2. Steve, you can talk about where do our applicants tend to fall in their career development?
It's really, it's very wide. I think the concern wouldn't necessarily be like an age or where they are in terms of the training. It's just about the time commitment and the assignments. the Composers on the Voice Fellowship is a very labor-intensive project. There's going to be a lot of time working. There's going to be a lot of days that you spend in the workshop room with us. So I would want to make sure that you're really kind of gauging the workload and capacity for it. You know, Composers on the Voice started really with the inspiration of how do we take something that is so incredibly complicated. If it was so easy to write for the voice or write an opera, as we could, just kind of like lay it out in one seminar, then there would be no need for this. There would be no need for spending years investing into this this process and these skills. It was designed to give time and to allow that time. So we're not expecting anybody to come in already trained for this. In fact, this is a project, a fellowship program that is designed specifically to provide that training. We're looking for creative voices, people who have something that they want to say and feel like they're in the right place and the right kind of capacity to learn these skills and take us on an adventure with them.
And the second question, would you require librettist applicants with more vocational experience in opera? No, we have received, and we've had as fellows many librettists who have not, or that was their first time calling themselves a librettist. They may have come from backgrounds in poetry, in playwriting, in other forms of writing, but had a particular interest in developing this side of their writing skills. And it is a very specific type of writing, libretto writing. Or they might have come through a partnership with a composer, might have seen an opportunity to write this. Some have come from doing musical theater, being lyricists and book writers. All walks of writing life have applied for this. And we're very excited to give people their first chance writing for opera.
And I see a follow-up question about whether readings and presentations of scenes are recorded for archival and demo reel purposes. We do record all of the workshop sessions for our archival purposes, and those links are distributed with the singers, the music directors, the composers, and the librettists, and the team that's in the room. We also record our First Glimpse concerts and our Six Scenes program, and we recently made a video album of First Glimpse this past fall due to our pandemic circumstances, and are looking for ways that we can heighten that recording once again in combination with the live performances in the 21-23 season.
And here is what is likely to be the most important question of the night for applicants who are watching. What are we looking for in a successful composer application? Well, I'll say that that it is a panel. So it's a number of people looking at your work and scoring it. We can talk about what the panel process is, and then having conversations. But Steve, would you like to speak to some of the aspects of what we're looking for?
Sure. We're looking for people, composers, and this would also go for librettists as well, who seem like they're in the place where they can, where this this investment of time and the exposure, the hands-on experience of working with these singers and music directors will forward their work. So there's a certain amount of, we're looking for somebody with an interesting voice. We're looking for a wide variety of musical and linguistic languages. Well, that was a little bit clumsy. Just for styles that are widely diverse from each other. But basically, it really comes down to getting to know you as a creator through this application process and getting to know where you are in terms of the work that you're creating and where you could go from there. Some people apply and they've never written for the voice at all, and they're submitting just purely instrumental works. That's absolutely fine. we're just getting to know you as a composer, as a writer, so that we can then assess where that is. There's a certain amount of just kind of getting to know what your goals are, why this is of interest to you. And as you move through the process, there is time for a more kind of deep interview process with myself, conversation about what, and another chance to ask questions and answer them for me. But just, what you're trying to get out of this, what are your goals in the short and the long term? So I think, the thing about a successful composer application is they're incredibly different every single time. Just make sure you're sending in stuff that you think represents you, because it's our chance to get to know you.
And I will say at the end of it, we are looking to assemble a team. Though everyone is writing independently, composers and librettists will, throughout the program, write together, but I know you're coming in as individual music creators or writers, but at the end of it, we are looking for a balanced team, and so that is a lot of musical variety, cultural diversity, interesting voices, opinions, backgrounds, so that the final group of fellows, we feel, are really going to learn from each other just as much as from all of the instructors in the program. I'm going to go to how exactly does the mentorship process work?
So the connections that we make for the composer and librettist chairs are a way to create a personal bond between our fellows and some very successful voices within the industry and people who have, in many places supported our program over a number of years. I prefer to think of these as personal connections before their mentorships, because our goal is to put two voices, the fellow and the chair, in conversation with each other, so that the fellow can ask questions, the chair can provide experience, feedback, perspective on all of that, and in some cases really help the fellow understand what this process through Composers and the Voice might be. Now, sometimes these turn into mentor relationships, but that's not really part of the mandate here. We're not coming in and saying, oh, you composer A, your mentor is now going to be so-and-so, because the mentor creator relationship is a really, really specific one, and we try to put people in positions where they might grow into that, where that is a possibility, but it's not an expectation. So you could come in and have 2-3 really intense conversations with your chair and say, great, I got what I needed out of that, and now they know your work, they can support you, but it's not necessarily an ongoing mentorship.
I just want to go back to the application process a little bit, and also thank you for all of these excellent questions. I think I'm a little overwhelmed by the amount that we're receiving, so that is wonderful. So apologies if we're going a little out of order and kind of going back and forth. There was a question from Facebook Messenger, actually, about whether there's a chance for remote feedback for librettists. And I actually think this is a good point to touch on for all applicants. We are able to provide feedback for the final round, although not for all applicants that apply, given the amount of applications that normally come in. For the, I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought, but I don't know if this question was specifically for during the workshop sessions, if there's remote feedback for a librettist, but ongoing throughout, we do provide one-on-one sessions with Steve and Matt and myself when needed about your scenes that are in development, about your songs and your projects that you are working on. So Steve and Matt, please feel free to elaborate on the feedback question.
The fellowship program in Composers and the Voice is one of continual dialogue, and it's dialogue as a complete team of fellows and our artistic staff and leaders within the fellows. But we're always talking to each other. It's not even a matter of feedback. It's just a matter of continual conversation.
And we also had a question about the applications for someone with perhaps early career or limited professional experience. Could a teacher or a grad student be a reference? And absolutely, I think somebody that knows your work and knows you and can provide a recommendation for this program. We are absolutely happy to hear from students, colleagues, or personal or professional references. Let's see, we have a question about work samples and how recent that they need to be. And concerned that work for the stage might have been written more than a few years ago. I think we want to see the work that represents you best. We like to see what you've worked on in the past few years, but certainly if there's a sample out there that you would like to put forth that also rounds out your application, then I would recommend sending it. Steve, how do you feel?
Yeah, I just want to get to know you as an artist, and that could be over a whole range of time. If you think that a piece that you wrote 15 years ago still is, kind of represents your voice and is an important part of getting to know you, then by all means use that. We'll want to understand the kind of context. We'll look at your resume and what you've been writing more recently and kind of look at it within that. But the work samples are really just a chance to say, who is this person, or what have they created?
Mm-hmm. And are teams interviewed together, Steve, in that final round of phone interviews, or still separately?
Separately. It's a chance for me to get to know the composer. It's a chance for me to get to know the librettist. We'll talk obviously about each other, but the interviews are, after all of that, is really a much more casual process of talking, and within that, getting to know, what the how this person talks about their work and reacts to the idea of the specifics of this interplay between singers and music directors and mentors and all of the teachers, the curriculum. So it's a chance to really just get to know you as a person, because if you're accepted into this fellowship, we're in there as people together, and it's that group of us, it's the working relationship that we share that really is going to be the success or failure of Composers in the Voice.
I wanted to bring up a question here of what is the intention behind the unbalanced number of composers and librettists? Mm-hmm. And I think that is wonderful that people out there think we have intentions for everything. It's actually just the way that the program grew, and that we found that it was we had, well, I guess, Steve, let's speak first to how you settled on 6 composers.
So the magic number, the way Composers in the Voice cycles through in the first year is incredibly highly structured first year, is that each of our composers is going to write a solo piece for each of the singers in our resident ensemble. And the resident ensemble is made up of 2 sopranos with contrasting voices, a coloratura soprano and a lyric soprano, a mezzo soprano, a tenor, a baritone, and a bass or bass baritone, depending on who we have available to us. So essentially, the core 6 classic operatic voice types. And so by having 6 voice types and 6 composers, we can cycle through, and each one can write for for each of those voices in the course of the rotation. When we added librettists into the program, at first we actually didn't set particularly a limit. And I was looking back over our history and saw that the first year that we had librettists in the program, we had 4. I thought, wow, that's a mistake. is that I think we've got an error in our records. And then I remembered, oh wait, no, we had 4 librettists that first time, and it was too many. Everybody in the training is doing the same, except for the composing. All of the composers and librettists are completing all of the assignments, the libretto writing assignments, any role analysis, character studies, all of that is completed by composers and librettists alike. And in the course of an afternoon or an evening session, if we had 10 fellows who we needed to give ample time in evaluating and giving feedback on all of those assignments, we just didn't have time for it. So 4 was too many. 3 is okay, and 2 is okay. So we really allow it to be responsive to the pool of librettists and composers who apply, and making sure that we're taking in the right people, the right combination of people. We're also trying to foster relationships between librettists and composers. And so through the course of the workshops, composers and librettists will work with each other. And I mean, you see this in the real world. It takes, if you're talking about writing an opera, it'll take a composer maybe 3 years to write the opera, to compose the whole score from start to finish. Meanwhile, their librettist may also be writing libretti for other composers on other pieces. So just the amount of time that the wordsmithing takes as compared to the composition, the music smithing takes, is disproportionate in the industry as well. And so I think the fact that we have 2 or 3 librettists who can work simultaneously with several different composers within the cohort is something that is healthy for us. And if we were to take more, there would be less opportunity, less meaningful experience for the librettists who were in it.
Mm-hmm. We've had a couple questions come in about the schedule, and that is an excellent point because I know we've referred to music sessions, and there are also other sessions involved as well on acting and libretto writing and even improv, which we'll get to in a little bit. So Composers and the Voice meets roughly twice a month. It alternates between the more discussion-based sessions, the acting, libretto writing, improv that I just mentioned, and then sessions that also have our music sessions with the singers. So the singers and the music team join us once a month, and the composers and librettists meet more regularly, twice a month than that. We do have a PDF on the website that lists the exact dates and the exact times for all of those sessions. All of the
we're going to be on Mondays this year?
Yes, on Mondays. The full time is 1 to 9 p.m., but don't worry, we give you some breaks within there. And just, small breaks. And dinner, of course. And so the afternoons run from 1 to 5. Then there's a dinner break from 5 to 6 and an evening session from 6 to 9. And the music sessions are always in the evenings in that 6 to 9 portion once a month. And the first 2 music sessions are basically meet and greets. The first session, the singers introduce their voice types, their repertoire. You get to know them and hear what they can do and ask questions. The second session is exactly that for our composers and librettists. We want to hear samples of your work. And the singers and the music team then get to ask you questions about where you're coming from and what's your style and what music excites you or what words excite you. So those are the first 2 music sessions. And then we have 6 more music sessions where each composer and librettist has prepared a song for each of the 6 voice types. So everybody rotates and ideally gets to work with everyone by the end of the year. This is a lot easier to explain on paper than it is live. So I encourage you to check out the PDF on our Apply page that says Project Description.
I'll just add about we are adding a remote component for the first time, something that grew out of our situation in the past season. We did find that there were aspects of C&V that worked well over our remote learning over Zoom, and it allowed us to meet more frequently. For those of you who do travel or even the travel, not having the travel in the subway is a great chance for us to get together. But we are doing in person for the first half of it, and that includes obviously all of the music sessions, which are always in person, but the libretto writing, our improv and acting classes, all of that we decided to make in person to begin with, so that we can get to know each other, to be in the same space, to really form a rapport with each other before we move over to remote learning in the second half. But we are hopeful that that does free up some people for their time commitments and their travel commitments, and gives them a greater opportunity to come in with us. There's also a question about the in-person requirements for the second year, and with the exception of the rehearsals and performance for our First Glimpse in Six Scenes program, again, those being music sessions, everything else will likely be able to be handled remotely if that's any sort of problem. We're happy to meet in person should the world lift restrictions and allow us to meet with you in person during the second year. But the second year is a lot about career guidance and seeing what we can do to help you go into the next stage of your career, what we at the American Opera Project can do with our resources and any connections that we're able to help you to make.
Let's see, I'm just scrolling through here. For applications for work samples for librettists, we had a specific question. The title page and the dramatis persona page are not part of your required 5 pages. So please feel free to include those, and then 5 additional pages of your work sample. And Matt, remind me, what is the preferred platform for uploading video work samples? I know we prefer not to use Dropbox during applications.
Yeah, I believe it's
YouTube and
for YouTube and Vimeo links.
There was also an early question about, let me find it here, if there's an opportunity to orchestrate your songs and scenes. The workshops are restricted, sounds like a strong word, but restricted to voice and piano for workshopping purposes. At times we've had some prepared piano or inside the piano work. And during the scenes, if an additional instrument is crucial, then that could be part of the discussion, but not a guarantee that we can bring on additional instruments. I think typically all of the scenes have been for voice, up to 3 voices and piano only. And then all of the workshop sessions are for voice and piano only as well.
Yeah, throughout all of this, we're trying to maximize the impact in terms of skills development that we can provide to all of our fellows and librettists. And so that really says, let's not pour any financial, finances into orchestrator bringing in instrumentalists. Let's really pour right into our music directors, our singers, our instructors, and make sure that the information that we're passing on through this fellowship program is as rich and robust as possible. And then later on, there's going to be plenty of opportunities for you to orchestrate things that can really focus on that while we're really looking at the voice and how we can use it effectively on the stage.
Mm-hmm. Steve, I see a question here about team applications. And if we've had recent teams in the past, and I know we've had the occasional experience of inviting a team and only one person being able to join us. So can you speak a little bit more about our recent team experience in our recent cohorts?
Sure. Well, we've had a couple of teams over the course of the cycles, but more often than not, we are having librettists come in unattached to composers, and that really is just kind of a response to the pool. How have team applications fared in the past? I would say For teams, we want to see two really interesting creative voices applying together, and they don't necessarily have to be people who have worked together before, but who share something. And so we've actually had one pair who had actually a long working relationship with each other, and we had another pair in one of our first cycles where we took team applications where they came in and they had never worked together before, but they had known each other and talked about opera for a long time, and it's actually turned into a really fruitful and long-standing relationship ever since then. So, there really isn't a precedent for either one of them being more successful or not. It really is just about getting to know each of you and understanding what the goals of your work together are.
And Steve, I think this is a good place to talk about the relationship between composers and librettists writing during this program, because even if you're a team and you're coming together, you won't just be working with each other.
Yeah, we've been working over the past years, and this is, I think, one of the biggest challenges of composers in the voice. How do we make sure that all of the fellows coming into the program are given as free reign over what you want to create, how you want to explore using these voices in your work, and yet at the same time create a structure through which collaboration is not only encouraged but really fostered. And so we have continued to refine the process of what we mandate and what we don't mandate in terms of relationships. We are now, and I think it's really quite successful, we have requirements that each composer and each librettist in the cohort collaborate on one of the solo pieces at some point in the cycle of 6 solo pieces. So again, that's another reason not to have 6 librettists in the program as well, because then everything is kind of blocked up. But in the very beginning, part of that getting to know you session for librettists and composers is for a composer to hear the librettist's work and say, "Ooh, I like that voice. I like how you handle language. I see something that really excites me about the way you work with language. And this kind of jives with the piece that I'm thinking about writing for the baritone. Is there, a way for us to collaborate on that?" So we try to allow for as much free reign, free decision in terms of what kind of pieces that you're writing, but there will be specific assignments of you have to at some point work with each of the librettists, and librettists also then that turns into you working with each of the composers, and through that then have really turned into some very successful collaborations on the bigger projects for 6 scenes.
And I see a question about composers writing their own librettos. We absolutely encourage you to use your own text and to write your own librettos if you so choose. So that is not frowned upon at all. And for librettists who might write music, however, we do, due to the structure of the program, you wouldn't be able to compose music for your libretto. So it is a one-way street in that regard. Oh, Matt, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, the question here about the program focusing on songs and short scenes and about producing a full-length opera. Yes, the program does focus on songs and short scenes. As Steve had described, the process begins with songwriting and breaking down the songwriting as we explore the vocal technique. In the libretto writing, we also start with songs and song structure, and but then we begin talking about structure of larger works, and this will begin to develop into the ideas for the scenes presentation. If you want to write in opera, by all means, go ahead, and the songs can be arias from that opera. The scene can be a scene from that opera. I think we want to encourage. We will have some writing assignments that will force you to write outside of that, so that way you can try out different things, and hopefully we can hear hear different sounds, or if you're a writer, experience different styles rather than just from the the tone and style of one piece. But when it comes to producing it, well, I don't think we will be doing a production. Well, I can guarantee that we will not be doing a production as part of Composing the Voice. We are very excited that many projects that have started as songs, as arias, as scenes in Composing the Voice have expanded into becoming full-length operas and have received world premieres across the country and around the world. Steve, I think that's a good time to also talk about the goals of the program itself, about how it's not about coming out the end of this with a producible work.
Yeah. When we expanded Composers in the Voice in 2011, the elements that we added then were several. One is a course in acting. Another is an improv theater games course, and another is in libretto development. Another is in role analyses of roles throughout the repertoire. And those pieces of the puzzle or of the fellowship program were put in place intentionally to, in the same way that the composition of the solo pieces and then the 6 scenes is to say, here's the assignment, this is what you're going to be doing, now go ahead and do it. And we'll learn through the process of writing, evaluating, learning from each other, and then doing it better. In the case of writing for the lyric stage, for an operatic stage, you're giving your singers, you're giving them characters, you're giving them words, you're giving them thoughts and emotions and scenes, beats. And the intention of putting in the acting courses is not to turn you into actors, but instead to put you in their shoes. What does it feel like to be up on my feet, playing a character and speaking these words? When I'm in this scene, what are the thought process? What do I have to think before I can say that next line for it to make dramatic and emotional sense for me as a character and then in this bigger scene? Because that's what you're going to be doing. You're going to be giving them line readings when you write your operatic scenes. So instead of, again, kind of doing it analytically, we do it by immersion. You have to be up there and be acting. Our goal is not to turn you into an actor. Our goal is not to turn you into an improv theater person, but instead to learn the tools of improvisational theater, because those are really collaborative tools. Those are tools that I use every single day of my my work as a collaborator, as a conductor, as a musician, as we evaluate scenes. Libretto development, again, get right in there and yes, study, but just do. And composers, we're not trying to turn you into librettists if that's not your interest, but you have to have that experience so that you have the shared language with everybody else in the program. When you leave Composers in the Voice, we don't expect you to have written that opera. Our goal is to have fed you and nurtured in you the skills that you will use for that opera that you want to write, but then also for the next 10 after that. Hopefully we are helping you learn how to learn as you continue to create, so that maybe 3 years after Composers in the Voice, when you're hearing one of your pieces sung by that soprano or another mezzo or another tenor, you're still going through the process that we went through when we were evaluating it in the room or evaluating somebody else's music. That's why it's important for us to have a broad variety of musical styles. We learn from each other, we stretch each other, we push each other, but we do it by being in the trenches.
And on that note, I'll just add that often in many applications, we see mention of an opera that you might be interested in working on or starting. And certainly tell us if this program would help you benefit that project, but we are not choosing applications based on an opera that you might be considering or that might be in early stages of development. Yes, all of the classes are for composers and librettists. And on that note, we mentioned that we'll get you on your feet to do some acting and improv. We won't make you sing your own scenes, so rest assured. you can relax on that point. But all of the composers in the voice sessions are for both composers and librettists. However, the music team, the 6 singers and 2 music directors, only attend the music sessions, which are once a month. Oh, Matt, you're on mute.
There's a question about our what our COVID safe practices will be. I can just say that we will be paying attention to the guidelines of New York State, of New York City, of the venue that we're in, and then beyond that, the industry recommendations of working with singers, of social distancing, of the PPE that will be provided as people enter, of cleaning practices. So we're very conscious, as so many of us in our industry are, of how to stay safe and yet still get to gather together. I believe we are hopeful that we will be able to do this in-person gathering by the time that we're together in September, and continue to do it safely. And we're very we will address any additional concerns that an individual may have as well.
And we will always keep you informed just about how the sessions will operate from the start. So we'll make sure that you are clear on our protocols, and we'll be there to answer any questions along the way.
Question, do you need to have a lot of vocal writing experience to have a competitive application? That's an easy one. Absolutely not. Nope, just write music, send it, show us what you create. I would hope that if you're applying to Composers in the Voice, you want to have a vocal writing experience, an opportunity to explore that. That's enough. So send what you have.
Another question about the schedule and talking about the in-person sessions and workshops over the course of the 2-year period. So during the first year, when all of the primary workshop sessions are happening, the classes, the music sessions, etc., the first half, as we mentioned, is all in person, but then there are 4 remote sessions between January to April. In the second year, that takes shape sort of based on the needs and connections that develop in the first year. However, I would say most, if not all, of the sessions in the second year would be possible to attend remotely. And we do have a travel and lodging grant available for one participant as well. And you can make a note if you're interested in that grant on your application.
And I'll just add that we have had a number of fellows as well as singers who travel into New York City, depending on the distance that they're coming in. Some of them may choose to come in the night before, and then so that way they have a little time to be fresh when we start around 1 p.m. the next day. But some take the train in that morning if they're able to. And the sessions do go until 9 p.m. So depending on that, you maybe, some people have traveled, gotten late trains out of the city right afterwards. Other people need to stay the night and then prepare to fly out or travel the next morning.
Mm-hmm. And of course, we understand that sometimes, the weather might get in the way, particularly in those January to March sessions. So if anyone is ever running late or caught in traffic, or their flight is canceled, we just ask that you keep us posted and you let us know. And of course, we understand that sometimes those circumstances can prevent you from attending, though not ideal.
That's part of the reason why we make an effort to capture on video all of our sessions, because it's important resources. All of these sessions, even if they're 2, 4 hours, 3 hours long, they fly by. There's tons of information. We're working as fast as we can, and we're not waiting for people to write down and take notes. And so having the capture of these sessions, one, allows people to go back and review it and say, oh, that's what we were talking about. Okay, great. And another, then if somebody, we had one composer coming down from Vermont one time and an avalanche actually blocked the highway. She couldn't make it that time. But if we have the video of it, then we can share that. And there's at least some kind of being able to stay up to speed.
And there was a follow-up question about how far away have participants traveled. And yes, actually, one of our singers this past year flew in from California once a month for their sessions. For the composers and librettists, it has varied from year to year. We've had people as close as the same neighborhood of C&V in Fort Greene. We've had fellows from Philadelphia, Vermont, New Jersey. I'm trying to think of the farthest.
I think we had San Francisco. I think we
San Francisco?
Yep. It's hard. Obviously the fact that we're in New York and still, even with some remote sessions, still, a lot of our time has to be in New York. It really does benefit the people who have an easier time, less far to travel. But that won't be part of how we make our decision about who we invite into the program. We'll ask that question and you say, really, you live in California, how are you going to manage this? Is this realistic? But if you can figure out how to do it, then we want to be able to be here for you.
And actually, Canada, I think, might be California. We did have 2 applicants from Canada a couple cycles ago.
Though where they were from in Canada was closer than.
True, yes, fair point.
But they have more paperwork to deal with. Coming to this question that it also goes to the recording, it's about what we record for the final projects for the songs concert and the scenes concert. Yes, we do make recordings, and yes, they will be available to you. We keep them they used to be more for archival, but we have been increasing the production value of them each year, and hopefully they will continue to be a better resource for you promoting your work and for your reel. At the end of today's session, we are reaching the end of our Q&A session, so any final questions that you have, please enter them now. We will show you a song that we recorded post-pandemic when our songs concert from First Glimpse was canceled for this past session, and we were able to find a way to bring our singers in and do some make that online an online concert. And we're very happy with the recording and the results of that, and we'll share that with you on our way out. Any final questions coming in?
Matt, I saw a couple questions about dramatic subtext and also the skills that librettists get to develop and learn, meter, word choice. And I know that both of those can apply to both the composers and librettists in those sessions. So I'm wondering if you can speak to that.
Yeah, sure. So as we talked about a little bit earlier, we do look at rhyme and meter, and and Mark Campbell, who is our libretto writing instructor, will create assignments where we're really breaking down word choice and line choice and these incremental things that are going to immediately see results in your songwriting, in the songs that you're writing for the music sessions. But then we're also going to be talking about structure, about character, about plot, about conflict. And a lot of times we will have a curriculum, but it will shape based on the conversations and the interests of our fellows. And we've often just kind of taken the course in a different direction based on that, about what these interests in, about where people were particularly interested in developing their skills, and the topics that come up as assignments come in, and we read them together, and we realize, oh, this is a very interesting thing to talk about, which is entrances and exits, and when to use them, and how they can have the greatest dramatic impact. So everything is fair game, and a lot of it, one of the beauties of having such a small and intimate group of fellows is that we can really get into what is important to them and what is going to give them the greatest opportunities for developing their voices.
Mm-hmm. And in addition to Mark Campbell, who is our libretto writing instructor, we're also joined, excuse me, by Mary Birnbaum, our acting instructor, and Terry Grice from the Irondale Center as our improv instructor.
So I want to, let me see if we have a final question. I guess I'll bring this up about what is the panel review process. We spoke to it a little bit before, but we do have 3 rounds, which is there is a first round that is evaluated by a large team of professionals. All of our panelists are artistic professionals, and that is a process of where the applications are scored and the aggregate scores go forward, and a top group is selected and moved to a second round panel, which is an in-person panel discussion with a smaller group of professionals. And those have been in the past singers, composers, librettists, music and vocal coaches. And then they recommend a smaller group to go on for where Steve makes his final evaluations. And if you want to add anything more, Steve, but I think you spoke to it before about just having personal interviews and being able to create a team that balances very well.
Yeah, no, I think we covered it pretty well earlier on. I have come to really rely on and really appreciate the amount of information and evaluation from the earlier panels that comes to me when I get the finalist applications. That's when I'm really, deep in the weeds with each of the applications that's been sent up to me, and really weigh all of the information that's been given to me, the reactions that have been given to me by the panelists has been incredibly helpful. Mm-hmm. And always very supportive.
We had an excellent question come in at the end of, do composers and singers and librettists have Zoom meetings before the performance or the workshop of the song in our classes? We encourage a dialogue between composers and librettists and the singers in that interim month. We ask that it's not assumed that the composers and librettists would be in attendance, but that conversation can certainly be brought up, and to offer any feedback and insight in between. So we want there to be questions from the singers about maybe where it's sitting, about the placement. We want there to be questions of the text setting and such, so they can have as much information along the way. That being said, we also want to see how much is reading off of the page and how much is clear from the start. And so that is why we encourage a dialogue, but it's not an assumption that the composers and librettists would attend the rehearsals between the music director and the singer. Now, at the end, for first glimpse, we do have a final rehearsal with everyone to hear their pieces and sort of put in any last calls or last requests before performing them. And for 6 scenes, we also have some built-in rehearsal time between the creators and the musicians as well, the singers and music directors as well.
All right, I think we've come to the end of our time. I want to thank everyone who joined us on Facebook and YouTube and putting forward your questions. This feedback session will be up on our application page. Applications are due April 1st. Yep. And oh, there we go. Look at that. And let's see if any news comes about, like a siren just went by. So we'll see if that comes in here. So yes, if applications are due April 1st, if you have any additional questions, you can write to us at info@aopopera.org. We'll try to get back to you immediately. And if you're thinking of applying, we hope you do. We are looking for all types of confident voices who are eager to advance their learning and their careers and really join in the beauty of creating music and lyric theater and art.
Thank you so much, and thank you for all of your thank yous in the chat. We really appreciate your questions, and it's great to know how helpful this Q&A was. I think we'll keep it up for future cycles.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good night.
We're going to be exiting here showing Morning Song. This was written in our most recent session by composer Michael Lancy and CMV librettist Secondary Spy. And it is performed by our resident mezzo-soprano, Augusta Casso.
I can hear you. I can hear you calling in a hunger cry. I can hear you calling in a hunger cry to reveal your need. I can hear you. I can hear you call as you discover your hands and your eyes light up. I can hear you calling. I can hear you call as you soften your voice. As you soften your voice, I'll be the embrace. I'll be the embrace. The embrace you seek. she